very good morning to you from Glasgow city centre. The great day has at last arrived. The 1986 Glasgow Scottish CityLink Coaches Marathon. And the scene around this most historic part of old Glasgow, the Salt Market, and the High Street, one of great excitement and anticipation, as the 8,210 starters mass in Glasgow Green, ready to move to the start line there. All those long and sometimes lonely and sometimes painful nights and days through the winter and the spring, all the training hopefully about to be worth it. And here to see it with us is a man who has spent most of this great summer of athletics travelling from one European city to another, but for the very first time in Glasgow on Marathon Sunday, Stuart Story. Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning, Doogie. It really is quite an interesting course, this, to say the least. This start is the first part of the first 3 miles, which I consider to be quite difficult, mainly uphill, and it will be a crucial factor as far as the leading athletes are concerned, particularly in terms of pace. They won't want to go off too fast here, and I think that I went round the course with Robin Nash yesterday, one of the favourites from England, and he was quite clear in his assessment of the course. It mustn't be too fast early on. And I think we shall be seeing a little bit of controlled running, and it'll be interesting again to see if anyone takes on the race early on, and if they do, then they may well pay the penalty later on. But most of these athletes will also find it difficult. There are about, well, 3/4 of the field, I would think, are unattached to clubs of any sort. So that means they're running perhaps for the first time. A very large percentage are running for the first time. And I wonder whether they've got the training absolutely right, because in no way is this a fun run in the true sense of the word. There are far too many hills and undulations. But one thing one can be sure of, Doogie, they'll certainly see the majority of this city of Glasgow. It's quite a winding course, and every part of the city seems to be covered by it.
That's right. It's a very attractive course in many ways, taking in as it does Kelvin Grove Park, Bella Houston Park, Pollock Park, and in those stages it makes a pleasant change for the athletes from the streets, which obviously form the major part of the 26 miles, 385 yards. The weather conditions, well, it's a fairly grey and drizzly and fairly windy autumn morning, but overall conditions, as long as that wind drops, as the forecast predicts it will be, are really not all that bad, Stuart. I think that the athletes will be quite happy with the weather.
And also, it's very much an international race, this. There are 21 countries represented, and that was the official list, and it's a team race too. And in the past, of course, England have dominated the team event, and looking at the team down today, they may well do the same again. But we shall see. Well, apprehension for everyone, and I must say I'm quite amazed by the fact that some of these people carry balloons and ostriches and all sorts of things around the course, and to run a marathon 26 miles and 385 yards without any of those hindrances is difficult, to say the least. Just whilst we wait for this start, there's Leslie Watson just moving back with the bottles, preparing for her start. And incidentally, the women will start in the same ranks as the men. Now, in the London Marathon, this isn't the case. There are separate starts. So the women will find themselves back in the ranks, and with the exception of the better runners, who will be up in the front 2 rows. Leslie Watson will be one of those, of course, one of the specialists that we've already heard from. Some of the men to look out for. Robin Nash, he will be wearing number 5. He'll be representing England. Kenny Stewart, number 6 for England. Tomislav Askovic of Yugoslavia, and Jacek Konieczny of Poland. These are the super athletes in here. We'll have to watch how they get on later.
Take a look at some of the points of the course we'll be looking for over the next 2.5 hours or so. The start, obviously, that incline up High Street, no bad thing. That'll stop a few of the rasher runners perhaps setting off too quickly. Up to the top of the hill, and then that left turn into George Street. Along George Street past the University of Strathclyde, on the right down to George Square in the distance. There it is in all its grandeur. From there the route takes them right through the city centre, heading west out along Sauchiehall Street and into Kelvin Way to the first feeding station, and that's somewhere around about the 3 mile mark, so most of the runners will certainly want to take on some water there. Tremendous number of volunteers required, obviously, to mount the 86 marathon. From there through the West End along Great Western Road down Annie's Land Road, and then this long stretch along the Clydeside Expressway. That'll be into the wind today, that'll be tough. To King George V Bridge, there it is, the only point on the course which the runners will cover twice, once on the way out, once on the way back. And there, one of those parks we've been talking about, the runners coming through Bellahouston Park. The Barhead Road, that's always a tough part, a long straight stretch somewhere around about the 18-19 mile mark. That's where it starts getting sore. And then back over King George V Bridge for a second time, along the Clydeside walkway past the Carrick moored there on the river, and then into Glasgow Green, under the canopy of trees, thousands of people massed around the finish as they make their way towards the finish line. There's Jimmy Savile a couple of years back. He'll be there again this year. His times are always somewhere around about 3.5 hours. Highly respectable indeed. And then after crossing the finishing line, that glorious feeling of achievement and triumph, the congratulations, the reunions, and a great glow that they have actually completed the course. That's what we're looking forward to. And back at the start, a lot of jogging going on, just keeping the chill out of the bones. Not seeing too many bin bags, so keeping warm at this stage is important, obviously, Stuart, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. The preparation, the medical advice on marathons like this, absolutely superb. They leave nothing sort of researched here. The medical teams are around this course. There are medical stations. There are digital clocks at various points on the course, at 5 miles, 10 miles, half marathon, so that the athletes can judge their pace. The better athletes will know exactly how fast they're going, but some of the less... incidentally, there was Robin Nash, one of the favourites in the foreground. The lesser athletes will find that they will need to pace themselves and perhaps use the clock. Tim McGregor, number 170 there in the foreground. See Jimmy Savile tucked away in the back. Look at him, blonde hair. He's made his way to the front. There's Leslie Watson.
And there is one of the spectators we have come to expect and look for.
Stewart, number 6, tucked in. There's Alan Adams, Scotland, number 32. The 117 at the front. That's Jim Doig of Aberdeen Athletics Club. 28 years old, all waiting. Now, these are difficult times because they've got about 2.5 hours in front of them. The leaders about 2 hours and 15 minutes. The record is held by John Boys, England, set in 1984 at 2 hours 14.54. You'll see the leading athlete burst away from the rest of the field.
We're now literally only seconds away from 9:30. The lead car in the foreground, ready to take this field of 8,210 runners. Off they go. We're underway. It's all smiles at the beginning. Our camera there just at the base of the Tron steeple, around which the runners will separate. And those at the beginning will always have the satisfaction of saying that they led the Glasgow Marathon, even if it was only for a few hundred yards. But for many of those, of course, they'll have to be very careful not to go off too quickly, Stuart.
Well, Bruce Maroney is the man in the lead at 2:92, and he may not hold that position very long, but this is his moment of glory, as you say.
He's looking to do it in 2 hours 35, which is very respectable running indeed. He'll know that the early stages have to be taken carefully. This incline, which I think you can see there as they come up High Street, no bad thing at all.
I think at the early stage of this race, you're just carried along with the wave of people, and one doesn't get a true feeling of running uphill yet. And quite frankly, their thoughts are elsewhere. They're enjoying and savouring this moment. A very large number of these athletes are engaged in this first marathon voyage for the very first time. They've never ever run 26 miles, and most of them, I would think, have very seldom run 15 miles or more. So it's new territory. Someone there taking no chances at all.
The Glasgow Marathon,
Fair variety in styles of running gear as well. Round that left turn then into George Street. And already that leading pack beginning to thin out. Back in the mass, of course, those still just crossing the start line. The bin liners will be discarded along the route, obviously. I don't imagine they'll want to run the whole way. But just until they get warmed up and into their stride. It's to protect them from the drizzle and from the cold.
The instructions actually, Dougie said, don't try and overtake too early in this race, but quite frankly, I can't see too much opportunity for overtaking here. It's a matter of settling down and waiting for the start to get underway. And as you said earlier on, it takes 8 or 9 minutes for this field to get over the start line, and that's something. What a sight it is.
Rugby chant going up, and that must be one of the memorable sporting pictures, that enormous mass of humanity taking on the challenge of the marathon.
It's listed that there are 139 postmen taking part here, limbering up for tomorrow's round. 267 policemen and women, and that's probably the only way they've avoided duty today.
The Scottish team consisting of Frank Harper from Petrevie, Alan Adams from Dumbarton and Murray McNaught from Fife AC. And as the field disappears remarkably quickly, really, they've been and they've gone, and the clearing up begins. So all those discarded bin bags have to be collected. That's just another little administrative headache for the organising committee.
Well, there's the situation after 2.5 miles of this first difficult part in Kelvin Way, and the leader 1:14, Ian Bloomfield, Chester Street Athletics Club. Roger Coombs is there, number 4:06. So is Suleiman Silachai of Turkey, 43. 1:15, Andrew Beattie's up there. So is Kenny Stewart of England, and Jacek Konieczny of Poland, and Robin Nash, the Westbury Harrier. So in fact all the big names are up front, and this group trailing them still in with a chance of respectability, and the times, I suppose, for the leaders just outside 2 hours and 16 minutes at the moment. The first watering station, and most of the leaders took a drink, and the trailers here still enjoying the festive spirit.
And these are all good club runners. They'll all be expecting good times. Couple slowed to a walk just to take their first drink there. 6:84 is John McCoy, 26-year-old from Tollcross. 5:95 just in front, Frank Craig in the bow tie there. Very smartly turned out. 1:170. That's Charlie Donald, storekeeper from Glasgow. 86, the scene at Anniesland, just around the 5-mile mark, as this field of 8,210 runners make their way through the streets of Glasgow. And there are some of those heading for around 3 hours. 8:63, Save Jordan Hill School. Well, that's a fairly topical cause around this part of Glasgow. That's Ian McGrath, who's a lecturer from Jordan Hill, in fact. And he's obviously publicising his course. 1 or 2 of the ladies going through, but meanwhile 3.5 miles or so ahead on the expressway, there's the leading pack with Stuart Story.
Well, they're certainly bunching at number 6, Kenny Stewart, 26-year-old from Durham City, in his first marathon, pushing ahead there. He's actually led from 5 miles. He led at 5, 6, 7, and this at 8.5, heading towards the 9-mile marker. Number 1:15 is Andrew Beattie in the red strip on the left. 1:14, Ian Bloomfield. And on the inside, 43, is Suleiman Silachai of Turkey. He's got a best of 2 hours and 20 minutes. Stewart, though, in his first marathon, looks very comfortable indeed, in contrast to Ian Bloomfield, who's now 33, from Chester Street Athletics Club, looking for somewhere in the region of 2 hours and 17 minutes. But still well bunched. David Jenkin is up there, so is Stan Markley, so is Willie Robertson, 1:65, and Robin Nash at the back is still in contention. Just notice how the rhythm of the runner is upset as they move in to take that water. The athletes will just move to one side. There's Nash on the back of that pack there. And he is looking for somewhere around about 2 hours 15. The pace overall is about 2:15, 2:16. And the course, the nature of the course, will allow a much faster second half than the first half. Look how relaxed Stewart looks. Superb technique for the fell runner, who now moves on to his first marathon and looks to me to have the equipment to make his presence felt. There's the pole on the outside, Jacek Konieczny, and he is a man to contend with here. Personal best of 2 hours and 13. And that was in Debno in 1986, earlier on this season. He's 27, and he's making his presence felt. 1:65. There's Willie Robertson from Bella Houston Harriers, postman from Glasgow. But after 9 and a bit miles, then these two looking very relaxed indeed.
And back from the leaders to Annisland Cross, and through goes 1:48 in the green hats there. That's Gary Robertson, an accountant running for Strathclyde University AC. Those already something in the order of 4 miles behind those leaders you saw on the Clydeside Expressway. Fairly cheerful bunch at this stage. Leading lady, incidentally, is Sandra Branney from McLaren Glasgow AC. Anne Bates, who was third a couple of years ago, currently lying third this year. And the Danish girl, Hannah Jensen, is also well in contention in the ladies' race.
Well, the leaders, still little change. The lead now 1:65, Willie Robertson. Robertson and the pole on the inside. And whilst we see them head towards this 10-mile marker, join us back at 11:40 for a further update. It looks a good race.
Welcome back to Glasgow, to the Glasgow Green, and to the air of expectation around the finishing line. The final yards of the Glasgow Scottish CityLink Coaches Marathon 1986. The clock above the finishing line showing 2 hours, 10 minutes, and in around 5 minutes from now we'll be seeing the first man crossing the line here in Glasgow. Always gathered in Glasgow Green to await the winner, who is now something like 4 minutes away from us. And here he comes, Stuart.
Well, Kenny Stewart of England, who made the break at 20 miles in Barhead Road, has really pushed ahead and left the rest of the field gasping. A marvellous performance by this young man. He's certainly speeded up over the last 6 miles. He's an unknown quantity, really, in terms of marathon running. He's, of course, coached by Dave Cannon. He's a fell runner par excellence. The record stands for this course at 2 hours 14 minutes 54 seconds, and that looks as though it's in danger. Kenny Stewart, who has been for 3 years the fell runner of the year, has taken up road running, has taken up now marathon running, his very first marathon. I wonder whether he'll follow in the footsteps of his coach Dave Cannon, who went on after his fell running to represent Great Britain in the Olympic Games and in the European Championships. He's certainly showing, and has showed throughout this race, the sort of form that one would expect from a competitor at that standard. Just keep your eye on the clock. 2:14 is the time that he is attempting to beat. He looks to be a little bit slow, but at this stage, slowing I should say, because this long drag is a difficult one psychologically.
We know the lead runner is in the park. He is approaching
the crowd appreciating what is a fine performance. For once we see the grimace on his face, and one can understand that. And soon he will have that finish firmly in his sights. And there is target and in sight. Now look at the time, look at the clock. 2:14:54. and he's going to be inside of that. And it's going to be a new record for a man running his very first marathon. Take a note of his name, Kenny Stewart, well known on the fells, of course, but now well known in terms of the marathon. It's his marathon today.
And that really is a very good time indeed for Kenny Stewart from the north of England, completing a 4th win out of 5 for English runners in this Glasgow Marathon, and shattering the previous best time set by John Boyes 2 years ago.
And particularly when you go down onto the Clyde, alongside the Clyde on those cobbled steps, which make life very difficult indeed for the marathon runner. And the second man coming in,
This is the leading lady at 21 miles. It's still
it's Dick Evans of Wales. So he also has come through very well in the last half dozen miles or so, because he was well back in the pack. Just checking his own time, we can see it there in the top right-hand corner. He's going to be over 2:16, but Evans has broken clear in those vital last half dozen miles. Stewart went out. Evans obviously has tried to go with him. He's going to be a good 3 minutes or so behind, which gives you an indication of the margin of victory. Then the first Scot home, that's number 2, Frank Harper, the Alloa Brewery worker from Petrivi AC. He's going to be 3rd.
and when you left us at 10 miles, you saw Jacek Konieczny making that break. Well, he's coming in now behind Frank Harper. The pole, the best just inside 2 hours 14, and that's the sort of deficit that he has. Dick Evans of Wales, former international class steeplechaser, now 38 years old, personal best of 2 hours 18, 26, so he's going to be inside that. And he finished second in the Welsh Marathon at Bridgend in May this year in 2 hours 23, and he was ignored by the Welsh selectors for the international race. He finished third at Glasgow in 1983, and so he knows this area well. The 110, Graham Lang of Aberdeen Athletics Club, 29 years old, ran for Scotland in the 1982 Commonwealth Games, was 7th. It's when those Commonwealth Games were held in Brisbane. But Dick Evans, what a welcome sight that must be. 26 miles, 385 yards. And just that final little burst. And he's going now to beat that personal best, which, as I said, stands at 2 hours, 18 minutes, 26 seconds. And that surge is a clear effort to break that. Look at this. 2:18. Yes, it's a personal best. And
he's delighted with that, isn't he? He only broke it by 3 seconds out of over 2¼ hours running. It's beginning to rain just a little bit at Glasgow Green, and the pole has overtaken Scotland's Frank Harper to take 3rd place. Looking behind him, but Harper overtaken in those final few yards, agonisingly for him. And Konieczny of Poland takes the bronze medal, number 17. He's come a long way to do it. He's well pleased with his run as well. 2:18.5.
The time's not particularly quick at this stage, but the course is an undulating one, and it's taken its toll, as you can see from the expression on the face of Frank Harper. Frank Harper, the Scot from Petrivi, 11th last year, and that represents a personal best for him too. So a lot of credit to the Scot. 1:10, Graham Lang moves his way down to the finish.
Winning time, Stewart confirmed at 2 hours 14 minutes 03. 2:14.3 for the winner.
John Stevens of Dumbarton Athletics Club. He's chasing Graham Lang from Aberdeen.
Stevens, in fact, twice the winner of the Inverclyde Marathon, so it's a good finish for him. He's going to be in the first half dozen. And spare a thought too, as the leading men begin to come home in some numbers as the clock ticks round towards 2 hours 20 for those runners still away out in the course. Some of them will be running for 2, 2.5, even 3 hours from now.
1:14. That's Ian Bloomfield from Chesterley Street. Ian was leader early on and held his form well. He was one of the athletes up front for a long, long time, along with Robin Nash, incidentally, who was there at 20 and 22 miles, but is obviously in desperate trouble since then, and we still have no sign of him. 1:14 then Ian Bloomfield, 33 years old, a best of 2 hours 17 and a half, and he's well outside of that. He obviously had a little bit of bother around about the 20-mile mark, was unable to sustain the increase in pace initiated by Kenny Stewart. And you can see for yourselves his time just outside 2 hours 20.
Willie Robertson of Bellahouston coming up next. It's been a good run for Willie because this is his first marathon as well, so it's been a good day for the debut boys. Kenny Stewart, of course, a winner in his first ever marathon. That really is quite an achievement, even for such an accomplished fell runner as the man from the north of England.
David Jenkin there just going through, and 1:17. And that's Doig of Aberdeen, Jim Doig. And look at the battles right the way to the line. McGeer coming through, the Welshman. And then Stevens of Dumbarton.
A fair little sprint there for the line. And you can see just how hard this race has been for some of these runners. And it's a little bit misleading because as you turn into the park, psychologically you think, well, that's it, almost there. But there's actually quite a tough little run still to be done in those final few hundred yards. All the way up the hill and then the right turn at the top of that hill towards the finishing straight.
There's the Nelson Monument on the athlete's right as they go up the long straight. The 14 is Michael Halverson, one of the Danes running in this race. There were 21 countries on the start list represented here, and that's a good span. Some of the athletes are capable of between 2:15 and 2:25. He's a student and has obviously found this quite tough at 2 hours and 22.
This marathon distance, of course, of 26 miles, 385 yards, standardised in the London Olympics of 1988 when they ran Windsor to London, which was exactly 26 miles, but they then had to cover the final 385 so that they finished exactly in front of the Royal Box at the White City, and that's the reason it has ever since been 26 miles, 385 yards. Colin Youngson coming in. He had a good run too, very experienced runner. He's looking in a little bit of distress there, Colin. The Irish runners coming in here. Famous green vest.
Incidentally, Dougie, Robin Nash, we saw him coming through the gate. Nash, one of the favourites, who was up with the leading group, as I said earlier, until about 22 miles, and he then had terrible trouble, but he's in that finishing straight now.
That's Nolig McIntaggart of Era, first of the Irish runners, and he's summoned a little bit of strength, and he's making a real sprint for the line, and that's not a bad way to finish after running as far as he has.
Like getting wet. Marathon runners don't seem to mind it. It's the wind, isn't it?
The conditions today were perfect, except this wind, you know, it really held you back at times, and it was a nuisance.
Delighted Kenny Stewart, his first ever marathon, and he wins the gold medal, the silver trophy, and a trip to Melbourne for the Melbourne Marathon, which was also on offer for the winner of this race. So for someone who's used to running up and down the hills of the north of England, this race has obviously been very much to his liking. Well, let's leave the scene at Glasgow Green as the first 100 or so come in and head back out on the course, back out to the George V Bridge. That's Robert Lonald coming in, incidentally, number 156. And away out there at the 12-mile mark, still thousands of runners pouring through. They can only dream of this moment, crossing the finishing line. Their time will be a lot more than Colin Martin of Dumbarton AC. Dumbarton AC are going well. Let's go back out to George V then, and Derek Ray will be speaking to some of those still with a long way. That really is a marvellous sight, isn't it? And really, I suppose that's what marathons are all about, Stuart. We've been talking about the winners and rightly praising them in a tremendous performance, but this is the essence of the event.
Well, athletes of this calibre enter a marathon to actually say that they've achieved it.
Medals. Everyone who finishes, everyone who crosses the line will get a medal and something for them to treasure, I would imagine. That's what it's all about. No financial reward, just a deep sense of satisfaction and something tangible in the shape of that gold medal to hang on the mantelpiece to prove that they did it.
That was Suleiman Sulukai of Turkey just coming through, and 1:30. Tom Uliup of Cambuslang Harriers going through. He was wearing number 1:30, 1:26. And that's Ernie Walker.
There's someone coming in with a very high start number, which usually depicts a slow finisher. 13.480. Willie McNeil, 33-year-old from Fife. Frank Blackstock of Springburn Harriers now coming in. Again, a high start number, but a very good run indeed. He'll be in just under 2.5 hours. Checking the watch. And of course, he'll probably have to take quite a few minutes off the time in the line, because with that start number, he'd be well towards the back of the field, which meant he may not have crossed the start line for something like 5 or 6 minutes. So he did even better.
Glasgow Marathon as an event, having run quite a few.
Oh, I recommend it to anybody because the atmosphere is really good. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't superb, but it was cool. But it was a bit windy, very windy in some parts, and definitely affected the times. But there again, it flows with you in places.
Of course, I know some people talk about it as being a hilly course. Do you find it as such?
The first half is quite undulating, yeah, but I think that suits me because it stops people going off mad, and people are a little, when you go up Stocky Hill Street and going out towards university, they think twice about going fast because of the bumps and the few little steep hills.
Okay, Dick, well, many congratulations.
Thank you
Thanks very much.
You'll come around.
To his liking. And although the weather conditions not perfect, that breeze troubling the runners at least, we didn't have the torrential rain which rather marred last year's event, and that's something to be thankful for.
Like Blackstock, just coming through in a personal best for him. 22.
22 is one of the Yugoslavs, Marko Dovjak, coming in just over 2.5 hours.
And that's Ryan Martin from Perthshire. Ryan Martin from Perthshire.
Well, this is still respectable running, I must say, and a lot of good club athletes and a lot of obviously athletes who've been good in their time coming down and through in very respectable time indeed.
So we'll be looking for something around 2:37.
For the majority to run a marathon in around 2 hours and 30 is something to be remembered.
Something like 13 miles to go. That's Peter McGregor of Victoria Park AC coming home now, number 170. These are all good, experienced club runners coming in with very respectable time. Sandra Brani, number 33, she'll win the ladies' race. Number 33 going very well indeed, and this is going to be a very fast time indeed for Sandra Brani. Last year, Angela Payne of England won in 2:37.06.
I think the most marvellous thing about it is that she began running only 3 years. Personal best 2. Personal best 2 hours 45.06, remember, for Sandra Brani, and she's well inside. Just watch the clock and you will get some idea of the margin which... look at the smile on her face. Front of a home crowd, a new personal best. Outside of the record, yes, but personal best, a first major marathon victory.
Brani has helped over towards her medal in 10 minutes from now.